Walks are so, it can be so different, and for some people they're really, really enjoyable, and for other people not so much. Some people dread the walking time with their dog, and I've been there. I've definitely been there with some of my dogs where you just dread going out with them. I actually really enjoy walks nowadays, and I have done for quite some time once I've figured out this little key part in walks. So the first thing that you need to do before you go out on a walk, take 2 minutes just to work out, is this walk for me or is this walk for my dog? So I know that everyone says the walk should be for the dog. The walk is for the dog, therefore they should do what they want to do. And that is very much the philosophy that I follow for a lot of walks. I think that is a very relevant point, that you walk the dog for them, not for yourself. However, we do live in the real world, and sometimes we're short of time, sometimes things get in the way, and sometimes we're just not in the best of moods. So sometimes walks aren't always for the dog on that particular day. So on each day could be different, each walk could be different. But what I want you to do is take 2 minutes just to work out, is this walk for me or is this walk for my dog? So if this walk is for my dog, then I can think about, okay, what would my dog most like to do in this walk? Do they like to sniff? Do they like to run around? Do they like to play with dogs? Do they like to go and meet people? Do they like to investigate things, or do they like to do training? So do they like off lead time or long line time, or do they prefer to, are they happy to walk on lead? So kind of have a think about what your dog likes. Now, obviously we've got to be realistic about this. My dog, I'm certain, would love to go and chase all the cats in the street. I'm not going to let him do that. That's not an option. So I don't mean what would they like to do the most in that sense. I mean what is going to be the most beneficial for them, that they're going to enjoy, that you would allow. So for every dog this will be so different, and that's why there's not a blanket black and white of what is easy, what needs doing and what's easy for each dog. So you know your dog, you know what they like doing. So for example, if your dog has had a particularly busy time where they've had lots and lots of people over, perhaps you've had a couple of busy walks that may have been quite stressful, then perhaps going for a quieter place walk for today and in this moment is a good idea. And that could be beneficial for your dog in this moment, because that's what they need. If your dog, for example, hasn't seen many dogs on the last few walks due to weather or timing, or just you haven't come across any, then maybe taking them to a very, very busy, heavily dog populated place would be a great idea. Or asking a friend if you could meet up with them with their dog if you know they get on. That could be a great idea for this walk today. You could maybe knock on the neighbour's door if they get on really well. Do you fancy going for a walk together? Let the dogs have a run. So think about what that dog needs if the walk is for the dog. Now, if you are stuck for time, or you're having to combine things together, so sometimes people have to do the school run with the dog walk, because that is the only time that the dog is going to get out that day, and they would rather the dog got out than the dog not get out. So therefore they're on a fairly tight time limit, because the children have to be in school by a certain point. So the dog has to go with them. Sometimes it's a case of, like with work, you've been called into a meeting, you end up being late and it's going to get dark, so you can't go to certain places you'd like to go with the dog, so you have to do a particular walk. And the dog can always be a bit of a nightmare on this walk. So what you need to be able to do is to communicate this to the dog. The dog doesn't know. So your dog will have no clue whatsoever about what is going ahead, so what the walk is going to be like. And the reason for that is we control the majority of what happens in the dog's life. You think about it. We control when they eat, we control what they eat, where they walk, when they're going to walk, where they sleep, everything really we do control in their lives. So it's down to us to kind of decide this. And quite often it's hard for them to know where we're at, or what's happening, or what's going to be going on this day. They don't really know, because we don't tell them. And we can't just say to them, oh, guess what? I was running late today, so this is what we're doing now. It doesn't work. They don't understand. So we have to find ways to communicate this with them, so that it's not a frustrating walk for us, it's not a frustrating walk for them, and we can all enjoy it. And it can be as easy as possible. So I will tell you about the ways that you can differentiate walks for dogs, and so that they can learn and understand what each walk means depending on what you need in that moment. I will tell you about that in a little while. But first of all, let's talk about what often happens. Dogs get walked every day. So for different people that looks different. So for some dogs they walk around the streets, for some dogs they go to a local field, other dogs they go to enclosed spaces, some dogs go to in the car every single walk. It always looks different for each different dog. So for your dog, this may sound like something you don't do, or it may sound like this is definitely familiar to what you do. But either way, I'm going to talk about it. So what quite often happens is we want to take the dog out, we've got to take the dog out, and we end up being late, or we have to combine it with something. And because we're frustrated and we've got a lack of time and there's a pressure, we then get frustrated with the dog quite quickly if they want to sniff, or if they want to dawdle, or if they want to say hello to the dog across the street, or if you come across something that was a bit unexpected. You might not even have your poo bags on you. You know, if you're one of those who's kind of rushed out, you think, oh, damn. But if we have time pressures, generally speaking, or even stress pressures, it's the dog who often gets the end of that when they are just being them, because it's always the day when the dog would then need to be really, really slow. Sniff every blade of grass, wheel on absolutely everything. And the reason for that is when we get frustrated, the dog then gets frustrated. And in order to calm themselves down, they will sniff and they will go into displacement mode, which is, I can't see it, I can't hear it, I can't think about it. So for dogs, it's almost a bit like if I can't hear you, I can't see you, or you can't bother me. Dogs are really great at doing that. You might notice them do it with other things they don't want to engage with. They'll see something and go, oh, look at that wonderful blade of grass on the floor that I suddenly have to care about. That's what dogs are great at doing. So if we get frustrated and the dog starts to sense that, they very quickly switch off. So they can switch off really, really super fast. And we're a punishment-based species. So for anyone who doesn't know that, humans are a punishment-orientated species, which means if something doesn't go our way, something goes wrong, in our mind, our default setting is to punish it. Punish it until it does what we want. Punish it until it changes. Let it know we're not happy. That is just what we're like in general with absolutely everything to do with work, to do with children, animals, everything, people, friends, neighbours, the lot. And it's because it's our culture, it's our way. What that can actually lead you to feel like and to be like is someone who waits for the dog to get it wrong in order to punish them. Or if you're a frustrated person, you're not necessarily a punisher, but you're someone who gets frustrated. What you start doing is accidentally over-focusing on all the things that frustrate you and all the things that stress you out, and it makes you get more and more annoyed. So you start to gather these frustrations and you start to gather the stress, and you start to over-focus on the things that the dog is doing wrong in our mind as opposed to the things that they are getting right. So it causes frustration on both ends, punishment, both ends of the lead. So the dog gets frustrated, you get frustrated, and it's just one ugly cycle. So if you are out on a walk that is for you rather than for the dog, which happens, try your absolute hardest to stay away from the frustration and to stay away from the punishment side. It will be difficult because it will be tempting to slip into it, because that is our natural human default. So you have to really, really fight against it. Being more frustration based and punishment based gives you quite a negative bias. So it makes you kind of view the world negatively. It can set you out for the day quite wrong, and it makes you over focus on that problem. So have a fresh mind each day when you go to walk your dog. Take 2 minutes to go, is this walk for me, is this walk for the dog? Okay, if this walk is for the dog, great, what would the dog most like to do? If this walk is for me and I know that there's either a time limit, or it's because I've got to get my steps in because I'm working towards 10,000 steps today and I've not got the time to do 10,000 steps of sniffy walk with the dog, or I've not got the time to do the dog walk and my steps. So if you have a target or a goal or something you have to reach and the dog has to come with you today, then what you do is you work on a way that can differentiate this for the dog. So the dog knows what we're doing in this moment, that we're not doing the sniffy slow walk, or we're not doing the walk where we engage with every single dog that we see. Because that's another frustration that I feel from a lot of people in the group that we're working through. Well, I'm working through with quite a lot of clients at the minute, is that frustration of needing to engage with absolutely everything, which is part of growing up. Also very difficult, very frustrating time, but it can be worked through. So the great thing about working with positive reinforcement based trainers and behaviourists and choice based behaviourists such as myself means that what we do is we look for the positive. So you're looking for your dog doing anything even slightly like what you want them to do. So for example, if you're on a time limit walk, then you are looking for your dog moving their feet in the direction you want them to be going at the pace you're going, and you reward that. If you are going, if you need them to be paying attention to you and not looking around the environment because that is far too engaging for your dog and you know that they're going to get involved in something, then any slight look in your direction, you reinforce that. So you're looking for tiny little things that are going to make this walk much, much easier for you to get your steps in or to get your distance in or to get to where you need to be. Now, obviously in the ideal world, I'd like to say, just leave yourself more time. But quite often the reason why some dog walks are for us and not for the dog is because we don't have that time. So that's why I'm using time as the big example here. Suzanne said, people have a walk for themselves. I know, imagine that. Imagine the craziness of that, where you can actually walk for yourself and not for the dog. Walking without focusing on every dog is our goal, Claire. Yes, exactly, yeah. And that is, a lot of that is to do with age of the dog. Some of it's to do with breed of the dog, but we will go on to that because that was a question that was posted earlier. Very similar to Rolly's problem, is Obi's issue. So we will talk about that. So what I want you to do is, if you're having a walk that's for you, where you have to go out and do this and you've got to just go, then make sure you stock up on what your dog finds valuable. Now, again, for every single dog, this is going to be super different. So some dogs, they do prefer toys. For some dogs, they do prefer interaction. For some dogs, they prefer certain types of food. Some like meat, some like cheese, some like dry food, some it's about the way the food is used. So some dogs like to catch it. So you flick it up and they catch it. Some dogs like to chase it along the floor. Some dogs like to sniff for it, although not super helpful if you've got to do reward as you're moving, because they then sniff and then they're distracted by the environment. I tend to use a lot of throwing food on the floor when I'm working on the dog disengaging from things and trying to calm down, because it encourages sniffing. They have to sniff in order to find it, and therefore they're relaxing themselves by default in order to eat the treat, and then their focus is lower. So I tend to use a lot of chucking treats on the floor when it's going to be beneficial to what I'm working on. If I'm trying to work on movement and kind of like let's get going, then I tend to do flicking treats up so the dog can catch them in the air as we're going along. Now this depends on the dog. If you have a tiny dog, it might be a bit more difficult. If your aim and throw is a bit naff, that's going to not necessarily help you, because it might be going in the road, it might be going all sorts of places. And if you have a dog with a back injury problem, flicking things up so they jump is not clever. It's not a good idea. So you do have to amend it to your dog as to what you're doing. But generally speaking, if you want them sniffing for things and calming down, you chuck food on the floor, if that's what you're trying to encourage. If you're trying to encourage speed, you do things that allow speed. I tend not to give dogs a treat from my hand, only because I've had so many Labrador incidents where they go, "Ooh, food, yum," and take your entire hand with it, and that really hurts, especially on cold days. Now bear in mind, we're rolling up to the winter time, and you know what it's like when you've got cold hands and then the dog catches your fingers. Now, of course, you could say, well, you can teach them to take treats gently. Yes, you can, but when you are in a hurry, that is not going to be your focus. And when the dog catches your finger, that's going to frustrate you. And you're going to sit straight back into that mindset of, we punish when we don't like something, because that's our culture. So I would suggest you don't feed the dog from your hand unless you have an incredibly gently a dog who takes treats incredibly gently. Some dogs naturally do. By default, they just do. They take with their lips rather than their teeth. I've yet to own one of these dogs. All of my dogs love food, which is great because it's great for training. So you're looking for the good. Look for the good, tiny increments of what you're working towards. Whether it be a flick look your way, you reward that. Whether it be a movement in the direction you're going. Now, some dogs are great at movement. They will move and move and move all day. And the actual struggle for them is getting them to slow it down a bit and calm down. So therefore, they need more of the dropping a treat on the floor when they see something, slowing it down rather than the marching. Whereas some dogs, you need to encourage the marching, encourage the quickness. So think about what the dog needs. So I've written down the points here of, quite often, when we're working with dogs when we're outside, the issue is we always think the dog needs more training in a certain area. Now that may be true, the dog may need training in a certain area, but more often than not, what it is there is a requirement, an underlying requirement that the dog has that is not being met. And that is why walks are difficult, or can be difficult in certain areas. So it may be that there is a social requirement for your dog that's not being met. Is your dog highly social? Does your dog need to play with a lot of dogs? Now, this is different for different breeds and different dogs within that breed as well. Crossbreeds, obviously, a bit harder because they take from different breeds. But some dogs have a very, very high social requirement, and other dogs have a very, very low one. So they actually get overwhelmed when there's a lot of dogs about, or if they have to keep interacting with dogs, that's a difficult thing for them. Other dogs really need to see a lot of dogs. Quite often we mistake seeing dogs for actually having social time. So by social time, what I mean is free interacting with dogs, not necessarily playing. Some dogs aren't players. They don't really care for playing with dogs. They like to say hello and then they're done. They're then just happy to be around a dog. That's still social time because there's body language going on. There's conversations between body language going on. So for some dogs, they actually just need to be around dogs, one at a time perhaps, or two at a time, not necessarily being with loads of dogs in one go. For some dogs, being with loads of dogs in one go is a great thing. Sometimes going to a busy place where there's a lot of dogs is a great thing for that dog. Sometimes they need free time. So for those dogs who I've worked with quite a lot, if we're working on reactive behaviour, quite often that looks like we use long lines instead of having them off lead because it's safer whilst we're working on bits. Sometimes it's about having the sniffier walk, so that's the calmer, slower ones. But you also need to inject that time where they get to fully extend their body and stretch. So where they exercise their limbs properly. So dogs, they can't do that on long lines, they can't. So they, unless you lose your arm, of course, they need to have that full natural running around. Their natural pace is allowed to shine through. So for some dogs, walks, you need to throw in that you hire a fully enclosed space. It's completely private for you guys only, like once a week, a couple of times a month. So your dog is getting that free time and they're getting that full leg extension, able to run around, able to behave naturally, where they can switch off and you can switch off. Sometimes that is what is needed for your dog, and they haven't had enough of that. So they've got a lot of pent up frustration around walking because they're not able to meet that requirement that they have, which all dogs do have. And it's not, you don't want to do anything that's going to hike them up. So, like launching toys around can generally hike them up as opposed to just be a natural leg exercise and a spine stretch for them. Sue says, on the walk we've just done, Jackson played with another dog and Summer played with the person. Yeah, that sounds about right. At least you've got one of each. At least they don't end up, being 2-on-1 with a dog or with a person. That's great. One entertains the dog, one entertains the person. So yeah, a great point as well. Some dogs love social time with people. Has your dog met enough people recently? Have they interacted with enough people? Because quite often our go-to when the dog is too much with people, if they're jumpy or mouthy or they're just way too excited with people. Our thing that we like to do is then withdraw them from people or put them on lead when we see people. Now that is responsible. It's safety. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're working at the issue as well, so that they're getting better, not just now we don't have social time at all, because you end up creating another frustration, which is where they're so desperate to be around people. And quite often when dogs are frustrated about something, they can't learn, they can't understand, and they can't get new information into their head and keep it there because they're not actually, that their requirements aren't being met, either socially or physically, emotional needs. So reason for me bringing this up is I'm in the process, should I say, of creating a free ebook. So this will be shared with everyone within this group. I will post it in here when I've done it. And it's about meeting your dog's requirements. So before you even look at training, before you even look at what you want your dog to do, you need to make sure that their needs are being met first. So if their needs are being met, you're then in a great place for starting some training there. but put in the training of what you want them to do. And the best way of doing that is looking at where you want to be at. So you've got where you're at the moment and your goal for where you want to be at. And it doesn't matter how big this goal is. Doesn't matter what your dream is for you and your dog. Go as high as you like. Raise the stakes. But it's building towards it in tiny, tiny increments. And this is why I say what you're looking to do is look for that tiny thing that is like what you're after. So rewarding just a look at you. Anytime your dog chooses to look at you, great. Rewarding the dog for moving is great because that's the direction you're going in. If you're working on your dog slowing down, working on them when they are walking slower, maybe just after sniffing. Some dogs are a bit slower after sniffing or just on the approach to a sniff. So you're working at that. So look at what you want from your dog. Where do you want them to be at? What does that look like? Where are we at the minute? And how can we get there in the tiniest, most achievable steps possible? So your first goal on a walk could be, I want my dog to look at me once on this walk. And then you reward the crap out of it. Like, you go mad for rewarding that, because that is what we're after. Have a party. Go with as many rewards as you like. Get toy out, play tuggy, whoever you want, because that dog has just done exactly what you were after. Even if it is at just before you get in your house on the way back from your walk, they still did it. So often we look for the great big goal. I want my dog to be able to walk with me and go in the direction I am and not react to anything, and to go exactly where I'm going and be completely brilliantly well behaved the entire time, come back when I call them, and then we're done with our great walk. And that is so unrealistic for so many dogs because it's such a big leap for them. It's such a huge leap from where they're at that we just end up with that both ends of the leads being frustrated again. Lisa says, I take Zeus to an enclosed field twice every week as he loves to be free running around. Perfect, great. I hope that's helping him. I hope you're starting to see that's a real benefit to him because he's a young dog. So, I mean, we book enclosed fields for Bosun because he's 15. But he absolutely loves the freedom of being able to stretch and roam about and, run and extend his spine, extend his joints, to be able to run in between sniffs, because he loves to sniff, but he loves to bolt off suddenly as well. So that's nice for him that he gets to have that time where he can catch up with us. You know how lots of dogs like it where they're sniffing or they're interacting with something and then you walk ahead and then they get to run to catch up with you. Dogs love that. Because it's like happiness time. It's like, yeah, you're catching up with the people. Or a lot of dogs get reinforcement from when they go ahead of you and then you call them or you say we're going this way and then they get to run past you again. So although he can't do it for long, love him, he can only do like half an hour. He absolutely loves it. So I do recommend using enclosed fields if you are someone who maybe can't trust your dog off lead yet. Maybe you have reactive dog issues. Perhaps your dog has phobias. Maybe you're working on things like that, or maybe it'd just be nice just to book a field. Perhaps there could be some agility stuff there. I know there's a lot of places in Essex and around this area. There's also a lot of places in Milton Keynes, which I do use quite a bit when I do my sessions there. We hire them and use them because they're great areas for teaching what you want with, nothing can come to you and your dog can't leave. So therefore you can be free, you can have that switch off time if you want to, if that's what you're using it for, just to be able to have a walk where you don't have to care about what the dog's doing and vice versa. Or you might have it as a way of working towards your goals, of like I say, working towards those recalls, working towards prey drive, working towards loose lead walking without distractions about. You can try that in there as well. Lisa says, yes, Zeus is the same as Bo, loves to sniff on all walks, but as he's young and energetic, he loves his off-lead time. Exactly. Dogs do love their off-lead time. They really appreciate it. And for some dogs, they'll just follow you about the field. Wherever you go, they'll just follow you about. Some dogs love to really zoom about and stretch. So some really, really need that requirement being met. So with that in mind, as I say, rewards have got to be what your dog finds rewarding. So I have a great big speech bit on this that I've written out, which I will include within within my ebook. And the reason it's got to be rewarding for the dog, it is not all rewards are. So quite often we think, oh, well, if we reward them with food, therefore we're rewarding them. If they don't want the food, you're actually punishing them. So you're giving them something they do not want. And you're almost trying to force it on them, which is a bit like when you have a child who won't eat their peas and you're trying to force them to eat them. I'm not suggesting anyone in this group does this, but people have been known to. So, it's it's not great for them, and it's not a reward. It's actually a switch off moment. So where before I said about that displacement behaviour that dogs will do, where they'll switch off and go, well, I can't see you and I can't hear you because you're just far too much to deal with at the minute. Dogs will do that if you try and reward them with something they don't want as well. It's also the same if you're trying to reinforce with a toy. If you're going, get the tuggy, get the tuggy, get the tuggy, and you're in the dog's face and the dog doesn't want the tuggy, you are punishing them with that. You're switching them off to engaging with you and engaging with that toy. And you're breaking that possible great association you might have in the home with it, or that association you're trying to build. You can actually be breaking it by doing that. So you have to find what the dog finds reinforcing. Sit and think about that today. Think about that this evening. What does your dog love the most? Some dogs actually like to scavenge for things. That's their deal. That's their number one reinforcer. Some dogs love certain foods. Some dogs love interaction. Some dogs love being told they're great, good boy. I've actually worked with a lot of dogs, usually shepherd types actually, who just love to be told that they're doing a good job. My Labrador, my old chocolate Labrador, Mackerson, God love him, he used to just love it when you scratched his bum. So, you know, on their back end and all around his thighs and everything there. So he did have hip trouble, but he loved it. If you just stopped and went, oh, you're a good boy, and then you like scratch all his back. That was my dog voice, by the way. That was my talking to my dog voice. You know, and you just like scratch him everywhere there. Oh, I used to love it. And he'd get so happy and he'd do his stamping and then he'd get all excited and then he'd just walk off. But that was what he liked. So, I mean, food would have worked really well because he was a greedy pig, but he absolutely loved that as well. Toys, if I tried to do a toy thing for Mackerson, he would have stared at me like I was an idiot. He would have literally just looked at me like, are you confusing me with someone else? That is a stupid idea. So you need to make sure that what you're working with is what they want. So likewise for some dogs, they're not keen on food outside. Sometimes it can be because it's been poisoned before. And I don't mean actual poison. I mean, you've used it in a negative scenario for that dog. And sometimes accidental timing of food or reward in any way can predict a negative thing for the dog. For example, if they're not keen on traffic and you reward them and then a car appears, they can believe that the reward brought the car. So they will avoid the next reward you try and give them. And if you try and present it, they'll go, no, I don't like that because it brings the cars and I don't like cars. So for some dogs, it is the association they have with the reward, which is hard. You have to rebuild an association. For some dogs, it's the way you're giving it. You're trying to give it to their mouth, whereas they like it on the floor. If some dogs have tight hips or tight spine, like my Mackerson used to have, if you put it on the floor, it becomes punishing because it hurts them when they bend down and they try and get the treat. Every time they lean down to get it, it's sore in the back end. So, or it could be sore in the front if they're having to lean forward, like Bosun has shoulder trouble here. So I know if things are too low on the floor, it's actually difficult for him. He'll still get them, but it could be causing pain as well. So you need to think about what's happening for the dog, not necessarily what are you doing. You think, well, I'm giving a treat and my treat's coming at the right time. Yes, but what's happening for the dog? So sometimes using things like squeezy cheesy. Oh, do I love squeezy cheesy? Works brilliantly. For some dogs who can't have squeezy cheesy, I know there's a couple of dogs in here who are funny with dairy. They can't tolerate it at all. And there's some dogs who have allergies. What you can actually do is you can get tubes with nothing in them from Boots, from Amazon, eBay, and they are just plastic tubes. I think you're supposed to put shampoo and things in them for holiday. You can actually put in there things your dog can have, like Greek yogurt and honey, perhaps, if they can have that. Mashed banana. You can put raw food in that. Now, these are brilliant for the dogs who can only have certain proteins of food and they can't have anything else. You can put their meat that they can have in there, mush it down with some water if you need it to be a bit more runny, put it in one of these tubes and reinforce with that. Because some dogs will work amazingly for that and it's not messy for your hands, it's great. So that's always well worth trying if you haven't done as of yet. There are some great treat options which I will share in this group after this chat, but it's not always about the food and it's not always about the toys either. Like I say, sometimes fuss and praise can work so well. Sometimes just letting the dog do what they want to do is the most reinforcing thing for them. Bosun's very like that. Environment is everything to Bosun. Being able to cock his leg over every single thing all the other dogs have done is the most reinforcing thing in the world to him. Being able to sniff every blade of grass is the most reinforcing thing to him. So that can definitely be used as rewards, and I do use that as rewards and reinforcement for him. So I'm just having a look at the comments a second. I love when Obi runs to catch up with us, his tongue out and ears flapping in the wind. Is cute, isn't it? That proper divvy, puppy, dopey look. I absolutely love it. I love to watch it too. Yes, Obi switches off. Whoops. Where's it gone? Switches off with food on a walk. It's hard to reward him without letting him run free and be wild. Yes, it is very, very hard. Try some of the examples that I've given today. Maybe that could help. The way food's being given, what's being given, timing of things. These can all be relevant. Toys can be great. Toys can be brilliant reinforcers. I work with toys a lot when it comes to things like prey drive, when working on that, but it's got to be done in the right moment. Coming away from play, dogs who struggle to come away from play, toys can be a brilliant reinforcer for that, because it's interaction with someone, with something they can chase or play or grab or kind of interact with, which is what they have with dogs, so they like it with people. So Rolly's not interested in food, no. So perhaps again, yep, trying some of the suggestions there, see what works, see if it's a timing thing as well. Lisa says, that's funny about the tuggy thing. Zeus is the total opposite and is always thrusting his squeaky giraffe at me or onto my lap to throw across the living room for him. Yeah, that's cute. That's absolutely lovely. Yeah, so if he's the one throwing it at you, then sometimes you may understand that feeling when you think, oh, not now. I really don't want to play right now. You know, I'm tired or I've got something I've got to do. And the dog's like, come on, play with the giraffe. That definitely... you can understand the frustration there sometimes. Sometimes it's good to play, but yeah, it's nice that he is one who likes to interact with toys. A lot of that could be his age as well, which is great. So it's great to kind of harness that and really feed that in. So certain play times, have him play words so he knows what that means, because that can help with recalls later on as well down the line. And Jackson loves to be released again once he's been recalled. That's because he's a collie kelpie. Collie types, oh my life, do they love to be released. That is like their favourite thing. In fact, someone in this group messaged me with a collie cross shepherd that we were working with, hers. And she says, he follows me on the walk. He doesn't go anywhere. He'll just follow me at my legs until I send him to go away. Is there anything that I need to do? I was like, no, he's just a collie and they just love to be released. It's their favourite thing ever. So that is the most reinforcing thing, is to be told go and go run, and then they come back and they reset themselves. So they absolutely love that release thing. That's very, very collie. So that to them is more rewarding than food, more rewarding than fusses and praise. They just want to be sent to do and to go run and do a lap of Zumi and then come back again. So yeah, very normal. Very funny, but again, it's breed specific stuff. So what does your breed like the most as a breed type, or breeds types if you have a mixed breed, and then what does your dog like as an individual? So there might be some easy options there if you know what breed your dog is. It can help a lot. So we've spoken about ways of differentiating walks for your dog. So for example, if you are out on one of your walks that are for you and not necessarily for your dog, ways that you can differentiate to them what's happening. So easy one is you have a different person walk them. So for example, when I walk Bosun, I fully expect Bosun to not pull me anywhere unless I touch him on the back of his harness, which we'll speak about in a second. Bosun doesn't do pulling me because I'm not strong enough to hold it, and I've taught him not to. However, if he goes out with Tony, mother half, he can pull him where he likes. He's big, he's strong, he can hold him. So if he wants to pull him around, he can. If I'm feeling in a particularly strong mood and I'm not too fussed if he drags me about, I'll attach him on the back of his harness, I'll let him drag me about. If I need him in a calm mood and in an interactive with me kind of mood, I will use his, so we have a collar, which I use. It's not a bag collar, it's not an e-collar, it's not a spray collar, it's not anything. I've got a video of this actually to show you in a minute. It's a bigger collar. So it's one of these bully collars. It's not relevant that it's a bully collar, I just thought I would tell you. So it's thicker. So I prefer, if you're going to use a collar, I prefer thick ones because they are actually more comfortable for the dog. They don't, if they were to pull, there's no kind of pressure in here where everything delicate is, it's wider. If I need Bosun to just walk with me, and when we go to things like rugby, or where Bosun gets to come along and gets to have social time with everybody, or if we're going to people's houses, generally we'll use the collar, because that means pay attention to me, and then when he's laying down and relaxing, he's not got a harness on, so it's not uncomfy for him. If Tony's walking him, I will ask him to put him on the harness and use the back attachment. And the reason for that is Bosun knows he can pull on that. Tony doesn't have to train him. Bosun doesn't have to listen. Brilliant. And he always says he's a really good boy, he's great, but that's because he's super strong, so he can hang on to him. If I need him to be on walking calmly but sniffing, you know, still doing his sniffy thing but walking relatively calmly and being able to interact with dogs, I will use his front attachment of his harness, which for those who haven't seen it yet, there is a video in this group which is the difference in one video between Bosun walking on the front and walking on the back of his harness. So depending on where the clip is, whether it's on the front of him or on the back. So dogs can definitely, without a doubt, learn the difference between what equipment is. Definitely. So you can have them walk by a different person. That's a great way of doing it, because they learn, okay, when I'm with this person, I don't have to train, I don't have to listen, I can just go. And then you haven't got the stress of it. And when they're with you, they maybe do the training part, or vice versa. Perhaps you have another half who does training stuff and you don't. Perhaps that's not your bag, perhaps you don't care about that. That's fine. As long as the dog knows. The dog has to know the difference between what's going on. So you can do it either a different person takes them out, or there's different equipment going on, or the equipment is used in a different way. Perhaps you might use a extendable lead. I know, I said it, I went there. Perhaps you might use an extendable lead with the back of a harness when you're on a walk where you're not interested in what the dog's doing. You don't care what they're doing, they don't care what you're doing. You're just walking and there's no criteria whatsoever for what the dog has to do. They don't have to listen to you because they're attached to you the entire time. Fine, great, brilliant, go for it. As long as you're safe with it, I don't care. If you need the dog to walk with you and be quick in the way you are going, perhaps you may have desensitized your dog previously to wearing a head collar. Therefore, they're on a head collar, the nose is not on the ground all the time, and you're reinforcing them for walking with you, looking at you, or ignoring other things, and you're on a bit more of a march. So that has been taught to the dog that this is different. If you're on a head collar, you walk with me and we ignore things and we just get on and we go. If you're on your harness, you can sniff about, you can take your time, and it's more your walk. Or maybe if you've got your long line, you're playing, so you can be off the lead but safely because you don't have an awesome recall. So that is attached, and that means you can be more free and go interact with dogs. So dogs can and do learn the difference between equipment. Anyone who puts different stuff on their dog to do maybe agility or fly ball, or to do ring craft, if that's what you do, anyone who puts different stuff on their dog will know that dogs can differentiate very, very easily between what gets put on them and what that means. So that is a great way of going about it, so that your dog knows exactly what's happening in this walk, because we have very few ways of communicating this to them. So changing the equipment or changing the person, great way of doing it. As long as the dog knows consistently what is expected of them, either with that person or with that equipment. The other easy alternative is you travel in the car. So if you go in the car, then that may mean for the dog, when we get to this place, you can do whatever you like. Or this may mean to this dog, when we go in the car, we go on big walks. When we walk from the house, we go on fast-paced, quick walks where we're not interacting with things. Or vice versa, depending on what it is you're trying to achieve. So again, that can be really, really clear for the dog. When we go in the car, this happens, and when we walk from the house, this happens. So as long as you're consistent with it, you can absolutely set yourselves up to have a better walk and to be able to enjoy your walks with your dog, because they know what's expected of them, you know what's expected of you, and you either have a switch off policy for this walk or you have a heavy, heavy reinforcement policy for this walk, because we're working towards something. You can't really have an in-between. You can't have a I'm not bothered what you're doing at all, apart from in this point where I'm now bothered, because it's hard for the dog to get that. I mean, some people do. Some people have a, when you're on lead, you're with me, you're interacting, you're walking with me. When I let you off lead, you're therefore free and do as you wish, but we have emergency recall in case I need you. Otherwise, do as you wish. So it's up to you about what you want to train. This is why I say everything is so individual, and it depends on your dog, your experiences, and what you want from them. So where you're at the minute and your goals. So just take some time, write out, where are you at? What are your goals? How can we get there in tiny, tiny, tiny little steps, and reinforce the heck out of every single little step that your dog is doing, any effort whatsoever towards what you're working on, and make it clear for them. Make it really, really clear what each walk means. So what they're wearing, what this means, where you've gone to. So sometimes changing the location can help. So I used to have a policy when I had quite a few dogs, which was when you go to the woods, you can run around and do as you like as long as you do the emergency recalls. And generally they just kind of like scatter about. I wouldn't really go off, but they used to do their thing. But when we walked in more public places, so such as in Milton Keynes, this is Manor Fields, so lots of Parks Trust land, could potentially be livestock, could be rivers. Well, there were rivers in quite a lot of them. You know, probably like to see a lot of people and dogs. So therefore, I don't want you going too far from me. I don't want you running around like a lunatic. So I reinforce more check-ins. Every time a dog looks at me, I reward that. Every time I practice recalls quite often. Sometimes I'll do 1 on lead, 1 off lead, 2 on lead, 1 off lead, and you mix it up. So you're keeping them on their toes a lot. You change direction a fair amount, and you have a 3 dog policy. So every 3rd dog we're not going to interact with, just as practice, but the other 2 you can. So depending on where you go, can also be a great way of differentiating walks for your dog. So they know what's going on based on where you're walking and what it smells like, what it looks like. This, you know, they used to go nuts when we got to the woods because they're like, yeah, this means we get to be free. But like I say, they still had emergency recalls. So if I called them, they'd run back to me. But generally speaking, I let them do because there's so many super nice smells up there and it's so relaxing to just switch off and not have to train the dogs as much. So that's nice. Claire says, Rolly definitely knows the difference. Harness walk nicely, running harness go. Yes, so he does canicross. Yeah, exactly. So canicross is another example of dogs who know the difference. If you put that harness on, that means go, 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 go. And they definitely know. So you can differentiate different things. You just have to be clear about what it means. That's all. As long as you're clear, they know. So let me just check I've got everything out of my notes before I answer questions that came up earlier. Yes, I think I've got them all. So is there any questions at the moment on this before I move on to questions that were asked earlier in the group? I'm just going to have a drink before my throat dries out and then I'll find them on here. So people struggle with walks a lot. It's a really, really common thing. It's like the dog could be lovely in the house and they're a nightmare on walks. And quite often, once you meet the needs the dog has, so those requirements I said about that are going to be in my ebook, once you meet them, it becomes a lot easier. And then there's just tweaks that need to be made. But it's so easy to get hung up on the negative side and how horrific it is walking the dog and how stressful it is and how much they don't listen and everything like that. It's so easy to get hung up on that because you then start over focusing on that. Sorry, bear with me just 1 second whilst I try and find this. I'm just trying to find the questions from earlier because they're not on here. Minutes. Right. I knew I should have written them down. There we go. Right. Found you. So the first question on here was from Suze. So question or 2. And the question is, I've noticed Jackson is starting to get growly if I've called him to me and he's right next to me, sometimes on lead 2, and another dog comes and invades his space. He might have just been playing with this said dog, or it could be a random one I've called him away from. I understand this could be frustration on his part, or if a random one he senses my reaction to it. But what is the best way of stopping it before it becomes an issue? He will sometimes do it if he's been playing with another dog and he's in front of their owner too. He can give the dog a warning snap. And I usually preempt this scenario by calling him away before it happens. Okay, great. So you're trying to prevent, which is good. What I suggest that you do is... So I think, first of all, where I think it's coming from, I think what it is certainly because he's a collie kelpie type and you've got a lot of value around you. Certainly you've done a lot of middle training with him, a lot of, walking closely with you as well. And you are super valuable. So you are high level resource. You are mum, you have food, you have toys, you are the giver of everything awesome. So therefore you're super high value. So that could be one aspect of it. You could be potentially being guarded as a resource because you're high value, not because he believes you're in danger. However, that would not fit with him doing it in front of the other owner too, because it's unlikely he's just resource guarding a different owner. So it's possibly his understanding of when he is near you or close to you, of that he can't actually just get out the way again unless he's released. So where you said earlier, he absolutely loves to come near you and then be released again. That's his reinforcement. It could be being in the collie mindset of when he's next to you, he's then there, and he's got to stay there until his next job or task is kind of given. So when dogs then approach, or they're in his space, even if he was just playing with them away from the humans, he's then snapping at them, could be because he needs that release cue. So 2 things I would suggest you do to help this is 1, keep on the move. When you keep on the move, it's much easier. So if you have to call him away from something, whether it be another dog or for prevention of a problem that could potentially be happening, if you can leave him out there, leave him out there, let him do. He's generally well behaved, well socialized. So if you can leave him out there, I would. If he's choosing to put himself next to you, or you've had to call him in, then I would say keep on the move, because movement is much, much less stressful for other dogs when there's other dogs around them. They're able to keep on the move and able to stay out of harm's way. If you're not able to do this, I would give him a cue as the other dog approaches. So if you've called him in and he's near you and another dog then approaches, I would say free or go, or whatever word it is you say that means off you pop. So he knows he's not actually in working mode. He doesn't have to be stood right next to you and he's not doing his job. So quite often dogs get frustrated. They're doing their job and they're next to you and they're doing a brilliant job, and then this dog is in their face and then they snap at it to get it away. So it's great that he's snapping, because a snap is a warning. So he's not biting. He's actually saying, get out of my space, you pain. But the reason behind it, I think, is because he's put himself back into job mode. He's now got his job that he has to do, and he's not aware that he can just go off. So either give him that freedom cue or keep on the move, and you should see a reduction in that, hopefully. Right. I can't see my comments on here at the same time as reading this, so I do apologise. I will check back in a second and swing back to it if there is any further comments on that. So I hope that sort of answered that. If not, I'll swing back to it. So Jeff says, hiya, I have a question for tonight. Benson was attacked again yesterday while on holiday, came out of nowhere and went for his back. Luckily, only a mouthful of fur. Poor Benny Benson. He doesn't deserve that in his life, does he? The question is, I always move him away and stop him retaliating. Am I doing the right thing, or should I just let him defend himself? Personally, if any dog came over and attacked my dog, I would let my dog's lead go. I would drop them. The reason for that is you're not actually preventing him from being harmed by holding on to him. Now, it's a natural reflex for us all to hang on to the dog, try and pull them out the way, keep them safe, keep them with us. What's happening is, 1, it could be prolonging it because he can't get that dog off him, because it's still going. And the reason that dog is doing that is because it wants to, for whatever reason, it wants to. It's come over into his space and attacked him. So if there's no kind of, what's the word? I'm trying to think what the word is. If there's no reason for that dog to stop, it's not likely to. So it actually can prolong it. The other part of that is, now Benson's already quite defensive with other dogs, because of being attacked when he was young and because of sort of negative experiences along the way. I believe I've got that right. So by him being held onto whilst he's being attacked by another dog and not being able to defend himself will only lead him to be even more defensive. Now, I'm not suggesting that if he has a go back at this dog, he'll suddenly be fine, but he has to be able to defend himself. It's the equivalent of someone coming at you to stab you whilst someone holds your hands behind your back. It's so much worse than you potentially being able to, you know, like move them out the way, hit them, hurt them, do something to get them off you. So I would say don't hold him back. We don't want our dogs attacking any dog, sorry. We certainly don't want them harming another dog. We don't want them starting anything. But if another dog has already run over to him and has attacked him and is already on his back, let him go, step back, tell him he's free, so that he can deal with that quickly. Now, you may find it's just a lot of slobber and a lot of noise. That is usually what happens. It looks a hell of a lot worse than it is. Get a lot of noise, a lot of spit, a lot of handbags at dawn, and particularly shepherds, they make so much blooming noise. But that doesn't mean that he's actually harming the other dog. It could just be him shouting at it and trying to get it off. And he can do that much better if he's not being held back. And it will also help with his association of being next to you. If he's on lead and he's next to you, and then a dog's attacking him and he's not able to defend himself, you become part of that problem. So you become accidentally associated with it, which is so unfortunate. It's happened to me in the past with other dogs as well. It's not fair, and it's not Benny's fault, and it's not your fault. You cannot predict what other people will do with their dogs. But if someone lets their dog do that, I don't like dogs being harmed. I certainly wouldn't wish harm on another dog. But if a dog's attacking my dog, yeah, you bet your life I'd let go of my dog, definitely. So I suggest That's what you do. You let go of him, tell him he's free, step back. Let him deal with it, and then pick his lead up and walk off at the earliest opportunity to get him out of that. I hope that helps. And again, I will check back on the comments in a second because I can't read them both at the same time. And if I haven't quite got it right, I'll check. So Rebecca says, I will be late, but don't worry. And don't want to miss this one. So could you cover Obi constantly laying down when he sees a dog during a walk? We were hoping the additional socialising would mean he would overcome this, and also that he's a bit older now, but he still does it and won't budge unless he can greet the dog. We've been to a couple of events, and if we're standing still or just walking and chatting with people and it's busy, he doesn't lay down. Only seems to be on walks. Only time he doesn't do it is if we meet his best mates, which we walk with regularly, and our friend's dog Willow and mum's dog Bobby. Okay, so if there's certain dogs he doesn't do it with, I would look at what's the difference between these dogs and the other ones. Is it that they come from far away? Now bear in mind, Obi is a herding breed, so he has German Shepherd in him. So that means look far and care about what's really, really far ahead of you. So that's part of their herding mentality from years back. Could it be that they're coming from really, really far first and he's anticipating that? Whereas perhaps if you meet with your friend's dogs, is it straight out of a car, straight out of the house? Do you meet them from afar? If you do, and that is completely the same thing, I would ask, is he confident with them? What is the play style like with them? What's the interaction look like? Are you more relaxed when you meet them than you are when you see another dog? Because there will be a difference somewhere. There'll be a reason why he's okay. It doesn't need to do it with Willow and Bobby, but he does do it with other dogs. So it could just be the fact that he knows them so well. So because he knows them, he doesn't need to do the lay down, because the laying down could be him assessing the other dog. He could be weighing it up. Is this dog okay? Is this dog sociable? Is this dog going to be my friend? Do I need to play with this dog? Do I need to bark at this dog? Do I need to run away? Could be that. So he may be assessing. So I completely understand the frustration with it. It's hella annoying to walk a dog who lays down and waits there until the dog passes. Because sometimes people take forever. Sometimes people stand and chat and you can't move on. And sometimes you just like to be able to walk. So I would say the best thing you can do for Obi is to reward him at the earliest point after you've met the dog, where he is then on the move again. So remember I said before about rewarding what you want to see more of? We don't want to be doing it at the very, very start where he starts his laying down, because at the moment he needs to do that. For whatever reason it is, he needs to do that at the minute. So it might just be information gathering. But what we want to reinforce is the moment where he decides he no longer needs to do the information gathering and he's good and he can walk. So you can mark that. Mark it with a good, a yes, a clicker, a whatever you want to use. But mark it and reinforce it. Now, he's not particularly foodie. Try the squeezy cheesy. Try throwing a treat ahead of you. So this could be, you get, like I said, I will share them. There's a lot of different treats that you can try. I recommend you do. Ones which are better for outside, ones that can be big, small, all sorts. Try throwing it ahead of you, because that encourages movement. It means there's a bit of chase there as well. So doing this at the first opportunity after he has disengaged from the dog, because that's what we're looking for, is disengagement from the dog. Now, he might not be able to disengage from it, as in look away from it, or care about food at the point where he has noticed it and he's waiting for it to come for whatever reason. So we're going to reward it after. And then that gradually becomes quicker. So it's called back chaining in training. You train the end bit first of what you like, and then you gradually you back chain it to where you want it to be. Don't start the hardest bit, the hardest possible point. That's difficult. So I hope that makes sense. It could just be that I feel with Obi, I feel like it could be he's noticing them from quite far away, and then he's doing his shepherdy bit. So a lot of shepherd types like to lay down, like collies do. Being off lead, does he do it off lead? That would be an interesting point. Does he lay down if he's off lead and he sees another dog? Or do you not have that yet? Is he on a long line? Has he not done a full off lead part yet? Because that would just be interesting to know. I'm just going to bring my comments back up again now I'm done with the questions there. Oh, wrong one. Clicked on the wrong live. Clicked on the live from earlier. Sorry. Bear with me a sec. One day I'll get the hang of technology. Thankfully, I have the hang of dogs. So let's have a little look. I see some more comments. I see some Jeff comments. So let me have a read of those as well. Let me just check and see if I've got everything right before we carry on. Come on. Oh, I do get frustrated with this. Remember I said about frustration? Oh, I get frustrated. There we go. Right, okay. So, Right, so Jeff, you said, I find the boys walk better separately. Yes, yeah, Benny and Bradley, sorry. Definitely walking them separately is easier. They're both very big dogs, so big white shepherds. Walking them together could be very difficult, and potentially one set the other off. Benson is a big lad, yeah. He may hurt another dog. The dog's biting him. It's run at him. The fact that he's bigger than the other dog is not necessarily his fault, and doesn't mean he shouldn't be able to defend himself. Now, if you're concerned he's going to cause considerable harm to this dog, as in death, serious injury, then I would suggest actually working towards having him muzzle desensitized outside for a lot of reasons, not just in case the dog attacks him. So muzzles, everyone always says, I shouldn't muzzle my dog because if a dog attacks him, I want my dog to be able to defend themselves. That is the daftest logic ever. Because if they're muzzled, they can't actually harm the other dog. They also can't bite anyone should anyone put their hand in to do anything. The last thing you want to worry about is 2 sets of teeth. 2 sets of teeth is so much more dangerous than 1 set of teeth. The other thing as well is if another dog is going to attack them, it's going to attack them regardless of if they're muzzled or not, as you have found. Him being unmuzzled didn't protect him from that dog attacking him, and he wasn't able to defend himself either because, quite rightly, you're trying to be responsible and keep hold of him. But my suggestion would be that you are much more likely to be relaxed around other dogs and relaxed with him outside in general if he has been muzzle desensitized and he's comfortable wearing one and he can wear one out and about. So then that also means it's another safety aspect of if a dog comes at him in a negative way, or if a dog does get him, you can drop his lead and let him be free and just go, you're free. And you know he can't harm anything either. And more importantly, he can't bite anybody should they put their hand in. People love to put their hands in dog fights. So it is a legitimate concern because he's a big dog, but that also doesn't mean he should be any less able to defend himself than a smaller dog. If a smaller dog was getting attacked by a bigger dog, my advice would be the same, regardless which way, my advice would be the same. So I hope that does help. Victoria, Riley would probably fight, then leg it, and I'd never get him back, run into traffic, hence I grip his lead at all costs. So again, that depends on the dog. So if he'd probably fight and then run, then my thing would just be relax your lead, because if you can't hold them back, holding them back doesn't help them. It actually can make it worse. You don't necessarily have to let it go if you have a concern that he's going to run off, using a longer lead, just in general. So 2 meters minimum is what I use anyway for walks in general. But having that lead relaxed so that he can do what he needs to do without being held back is fine if you have a concern he's going to bolt afterwards. So again, it does depend on the dog, it depends on the situation and depends on them. So the majority of my dogs, I would say I would let go. If a dog came and hurt them, I would let them go. There is one I would not do that with. That is Bosun. The reason for that is he came from dog fighting circles and he knows how to harm another dog, and he would, seriously, he'd probably kill one. That's why I wouldn't let him go, because I don't want him to kill something. But thankfully, we've not actually been in that position. But it does happen, it happens a lot. So Jeff says, thanks Ellie, he's already desensitized to a muzzle. Great, use that. The worst he can do is headbutt a dog. If a dog's come at him and a dog has attacked him on the back end, or any end to be honest, if a dog has already run at him and committed to that, let him go, because the worst he can do is headbutt it and spit on it, because his teeth are out of action, they're not here. You know, he can't do anything. So I think that's a great option that you've already done that. I think that's really, really good. It's really responsible. So I would say let him go if you get in that scenario again. Some dogs are prone to being attacked by other dogs. So I noticed in your comment that you, in your question, that you said it's happened again, as though it's happened before. And it does offer, some dogs attract other dogs, and I don't know whether it's due to the way they smell. Perhaps, I mean, dogs can pick up all kinds of things through scent. They can pick up, you know, like sexual status. They can pick up, like so, male, female, entire, spade. They can pick up anxiety levels, adrenaline levels in dogs. Oh, thank you. See ya. Bye. As Tony's dad just dropping off the ironing for us, bless his heart. I don't iron. I'm a dog lady. I don't iron. So Bosun loves it when he comes. He just gets spoiled rotten. I could hear him fussing him out there and giving him yum yums. So he's super happy. So sorry about that, Jeff. So 7 times, yeah. If Benny's been attacked 7 times, there's possibly something he's giving off. It's possibly somewhere you're walking, maybe there's if it's happening in the same kind of place. Is there anything familiar about that? As I said in a previous chat, there's some places where people exercise their dogs a lot. So if you're going to places that are more out the way or more enclosed kind of spaces because they're safer for you, often people will walk their dogs there because they're either aggressive or they don't have recall. So they will take them there as well for the same reason you do, but it can mean you're more likely to run into trouble. So it does depend. I'm not pinning this on you at all. It's definitely not your fault. You know, you're entitled to walk wherever you like. But I just wonder if there's any correlation between the places where you've walked and where he's been attacked. Has there been anything similar that we could look at and go, maybe that could be a common denominator in it? If not, then it could well be a scent that he's given off. It could well just be it's poor, unfortunate time and it's just happened and it's a hideous coincidence. And sometimes that does just happen, but I know some dogs are prone to being attacked more so than others. So it therefore means you have to do even more desensitizing on top of that. You have to do even more damage control on top of it, and you have to be even more responsible than you already are with the leads, the long lines, the muzzles, just to make sure your dog isn't hurting their dog when their dog's attacked your dog. It's not fair. I agree with you. It's not fair, and I do feel for Benny. I really, really do. So I'm sorry about that. So Rebecca, sorry, your comment. Thanks, Ellie. Yes. Think he's assessing the situation and working out how to interact with the dog. He's still on the long lead when we do big walks, so not sure if he'd do it off lead. Okay, fair enough. And we'll continue rewarding him when he disengages, as we've been doing this since you came on the walk with us a few months ago. Okay, brilliant. So yeah, work with the disengagement, work with it as soon as he does his look away afterwards, and any flick look aways you might get whilst he's assessing a situation, see if you can reward any of them. If he's not caring, not picking up food, not taking anything, don't keep doing it. As we said, it can become punishing, so don't do that. Just test it, see it once, and then if it doesn't work, fine. Potentially walking him in places where he's not got such a long distance to look could be beneficial for him. If it is when he's doing it from quite far away, walking in places with a lot more bends could be more beneficial to you because he actually can't see that far ahead. Lakes are brilliant for this. Whereas when you walk in the open spaces, he can see really far and lay down when the dog's nowhere near you and possibly not even coming your way. So it can just help your frustration that if you work on places where he can't see as far ahead. And yeah, I hope that is helpful. So Sue says, also me sometimes trying to stop an interaction between him and another dog who's come over when I should just let them be. Yes, yeah, I would just kind of let them be sometimes because sometimes owner interaction actually causes problems. Sometimes we get involved and through us being involved, we actually cause a problem that was never going to be there in the first place. Human involvement is a huge, huge thing in why dogs have issues with each other in the dog world. Dogs get a lot of frustration, a lot of stress around each other and a lot of social issues because of human intervention. So quite often, because we're trying to do the right thing, we're trying to be helpful and we're trying to do training and we're trying to do what we need to do with the dog, doesn't always help them. So yeah, if you think that you could potentially be causing some of it, take a step back, keep on the move and just keep yourself out of it. See if that helps. Oh, sorry, I didn't see your comment before that. Yes, feeling he needs to react because he's not allowed to leave might well be the cause. Quite often is, particularly dogs who find it so reinforcing to be near you. That's their reinforcement place. It's their happy place. It's their lovable space. They adore being there and that is where all the value is held. They often don't know they're free unless you cue them to be free because that's how we usually tell them they're free. Which is why I also said to Jeff is if a dog even runs into my dog's space and my dog is reactive and my dog's on a lead, if it is safe to do so, e.g. if they are muzzled or if there is no strong bite history, they're just reactive, I will actually let the lead go. I'll step back and go free and I will step off. So I'll be really clear, you are free to do as you want right now. Because when they feel they're free and they can move, the reactions are much, much less. Dogs are so much better when they are in like free space, which is also why I asked about Obi. Does he do it when he's off lead as well as when he's on? We don't quite know that data yet, so that's fine. But yeah, it's human intervention is a big thing. Dogs feeling like they're restricted is a big thing. So I hope that advice has helped you guys there. You're very welcome, Jeff. I hope that's been helpful to you. So yeah, that's the answer to the questions there. Does anyone have any questions at all about anything we've spoken about today? Just scroll up, make sure that I've not missed anything. I don't think I have, but I just wanted to be sure. So yeah, this is my advice on walks. Walks they're such a fun thing. They can be fun, but they can also be mighty stressful. So I want to set you guys up to have the best walks you can. You can't control other people, you cannot control the environment necessarily, but we do have a lot of choices. It's not all left to chance. We have a lot of choices about what we're going to walk the dog on, who they're going to interact with, who's going to walk the dog, where we're going to go. What motivators can we take out with us today? At what point are we going to reward the dog? And what are we looking for that we're rewarding? That's a big one. What am I trying to reward on this session today to make this go well? I don't need to have the dog perfectly well behaved today. All I need to look for is that the dog is disengaging with things. Brilliant. Work at that. And that can be a great starting point. So yes, I hope this is helpful, and I'm very excited about my ebook, which I will share with you all. As I say, completely free. It's going to be in the group and it's going to be handed out to people, because I don't feel enough people have ever been told about the requirements dogs have prior to being able to teach them things, and that these needs need to be met. If they're not met, you run into trouble somewhere. So we need these things to be met before trying to add on other things. So just by tweaking some things and adding in some things or taking some things away, you can have a much easier time with your dog. Now, as you can tell, my voice is going now. So I will love you and leave you all to your Friday evening. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope we've had a good time. I've loved it. And I will save this to the group as always, so you guys can watch it back if you want to, and anyone can see it who hasn't seen it yet. All right, take care, guys. Happy Friday night to you all. Bye.